Para unirse, haga clic en el icono de interpretaciones en la barra de herramientas de Zoom, que ahora aparece como un globo terráqueo. Una vez se una al canal de español, se recomienda que apague el audio primario para solo oír la interpretación al español.
Welcome everyone to our December 5th, 2023 Santa Rosa City Council meeting. It is now 3 p.m. and we will begin our meeting. Seeing a quorum, Madam City Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Okrepke.
Here.
Councilmember McDonald.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming. Here. Councilmember Alvarez.
Present.
Vice Mayor Stapp.
Here.
Mayor Rogers.
Present.
Let the record reflect all council members are present.
Thank you. That felt really nice to hear Vice Mayor Stapp. All right.
Let's see how long that lasts.
We are going to proceed to item 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, which are closed session items for the day. Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate public comment on these items?
We are now taking public comment on closed session items. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. I'm seeing no one in council chambers for public comment.
Thank you. We will now recess into closed session. Okay, welcome everyone to our December 5th Santa Rosa City Council meeting. It is now 4 p.m. and we will be starting our meeting. Seeing a quorum, Madam City Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Okrepke.
Here.
Councilmember McDonald.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Present.
Vice Mayor Stapp.
Here.
Mayor Rogers.
Present.
Let the record reflect all council members are present.
Thank you. We have no study session today, so we will go down to our report on closed session. Madam City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. Item 2.1 was continued to next week's City Council meeting, December 12th. Item 2.2 and 2.3 proceeded in closed session, and there is no reportable action from either item. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate public comment?
We are now taking public comment on item 2. If you're in the chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes, and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that period. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so. Please go ahead when you're ready. Thank you. We have no additional speakers on this item.
Thank you. Moving on to our proclamation for this afternoon, which will be read by Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my honor that I get to actually do this proclamation tonight, so I appreciate that. So this proclamation is for Eddie Curiel. Am I saying it wrong? Curiel. Thanks. Whereas Streets Crew Supervisor Eddie Curiel has well and faithfully served the city of Santa Rosa for 49 years, exemplifying the commitment to make Santa Rosa a safe place to live, work, and play. And whereas on December 4th, 1974, Eddie was hired as a temporary maintenance worker in the Public Works Street section of the city. And whereas in 1984, Eddie was promoted to the Streets Crew Supervisor, a position he still holds today. In Eddie's storied career, he has seen the city grow from a population of 83,000 to over 175,000, and whereas he's been through numerous floods and fires that have impacted the city greatly, all the while tirelessly serving this community the best he can. And whereas on December 4th, 2023, Eddie worked his last day for the same Public Works Street Crew section he was originally hired to. And whereas over the years, Eddie has been an upstanding employee and major contributor to the streets team by giving exceptional customer service and offering his wealth of knowledge, mentorship, and sense of humor to one and all. Eddie Curiel will definitely be missed. Now, therefore, be it resolved that our Mayor, Natalie Rogers, of the City of Santa Rosa, on behalf of the entire City Council, do by here thank you, Eddie Curiel, for his 49 years of dedication and service to this city. Congratulations on your retirement.
Eddie, would you like to say something? Can you go to the podium so everyone can hear you? Well, Eddie says thank you, if no one could hear that, and those at home. So, Madam City Clerk, would you please facilitate public comment? And, oh, Eddie, you're gonna talk? All right.
I just want to thank everybody and for being here and support me on my first day of retirement. So I appreciate it very much, and thank you to all of you, and I love you guys.
We would like to thank you for your service, Eddie. Thank you so much for your service to our community. So we will conduct public comment unless there is anyone that would like to speak. Okay, so we will conduct public comment, and then we will invite you down, Eddie, to take a picture with the council, and then if we can get a picture with the council and your crew, if we can all fit in here, that would be great. So let's go ahead and do public comment first.
We are now taking public comment on item 6.1. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes, and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Jason Nutt, city employee and resident, and really I have had the opportunity to work with Eddie now for the last 9 years. He is one of those, as you heard in the proclamation, just outstanding employees that really has set a phenomenal culture within our departments. He has been a phenomenal leader. He's provided training and mentorship to so many in our organization. I won't tell you how old I was when he started, but I was actually here. So that's the good start. We had the opportunity to celebrate Eddie's annual service award recently, and I got the luxury of giving a little bit of a spiel. I won't do that today, but I will say there was a couple of stories that came out that were very impressive and fun to listen to, where Eddie had his family. They know our corporation yard as well or better than most of the staff that are here. They've been there around meeting the team members for a very long time, and they are part of our family. So I figured this was my opportunity to express a huge thanks to Eddie for 49 years of outstanding service from the department side and from the constituent side. So thank you, Eddie.
Seeing no additional comments, we'll invite Eddie down by himself to take a photo with us, please. And then we'll have everyone else come down and we'll take a great big photo for Eddie. So Eddie, you want to come on down? Okay. We will continue to item 7, which are staff briefings. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Community Empowerment Plan.
Lana, he talking.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. Lon Peterson, Director of Communications and Intergovernmental Relations for the city. I'll be providing the Community Empowerment Plan update for December. So first thing, now through December 31st, the Santa Rosa Police Department is holding a toy drive to benefit the United Women's Group, which is the Grupo de Mujeres Unidas, a group of women in Roseland who work to provide resources and needs to their community. They're requesting new unwrapped toys for all ages to be delivered to Santa Rosa Police Department at the lobby at 965 Sonoma Avenue by Sunday, December 31st. Toys will be delivered to children at targeted distribution events in January. And next and final, I'm excited to share that we're in the process of hiring for the Community Engagement Manager position, and we're looking forward to getting somebody on board in 2024. That's my update.
Thank you.
You're
Are there
welcome.
any questions from council members? All right, seeing none, Madam City Clerk, may you please facilitate public comment?
We are now taking public comment on item 7.1. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. As you approach, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. Thank you for Mr. Peterson getting this position and hopefully making it stronger, especially with the idea of authentic community engagement. We had an opportunity in August of last year where 2 members of the Planning and Economic Development Department, Amy Lyle and Beatrice Acuna, came over to Roseland and began to speak with members of the public at a local restaurant. We were able to do it a couple of times, and it began to give people in our community the feel that there might be an opportunity to actually have Santa Rosa City employees listen to what the community might like to see out in our area. Unfortunately, Ms. Lyle has moved to another spot. We haven't seen Ms. Acuna ever since, and it had to do, they said, with the general plan. Well, part of a general plan process is to have authentic community engagement and to really get the people involved. And that hasn't been happening, folks. Realistically, what's been going on is kind of a shadow game, utilizing the internet, saying we're doing these virtual meetings and, oh yeah, this is happening and that's happening. But the real deal is come out and talk to people in their neighborhoods and be there. Let them know what's really going on with you downtown, and don't just work them. Actually say, hey, we're listening to what you have to say and we're going to try to implement it into what our policies are going to be. The whole situation is most people look at it like, well, what's the city going to do to us, rather than what are they going to do for us and with us. So I appreciate that Mr. Peterson is here and he's got an effort to go forward. I'm hoping that you're going to hire somebody for community engagement who's not just going to shine us on, who's going to be somebody who actually gets in there and says, we want to have that true community engagement that we talked about over 30 years ago almost, when they put together the Community Action Team. That's what first was going forward. And during that whole life of that situation, it's been more about your way and not necessarily what the community might want. And you've got a community advisory board, and they're basically just, no offense intended, but the term for many people is like they're go along to get along folks. They're not there coming out to our community and talking to us and saying, hey, what is it that you want? They're basically saying, this is what we're going to do, and having their meeting, and then that's what goes forward. So you basically have heard it from me before, but authentic community engagement is a real thing. The United States government, through the Environmental Protection Agency, actually embraces it through what's now known as environmental justice. So you folks could actually be bringing some revenue into our community by just following some of the guidelines that are out there from the federal government and not just making it your way. Let's actually make it our way, all of us in our community. A democracy, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Thank you.
Seeing no additional public comment, we will now go to our city manager and city attorney reports. Madam City Attorney.
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Madam City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The 21st Annual National Arts Program Exhibition and Competition has announced its call to artists. Registration is free, and the registration deadline is January the 5th, 2024. All are welcome to apply. So there's a chance to win cash awards totaling $3,400. The exhibition is scheduled to run at the Findlay Community Center from February the 5th through April the 19th. You can find out more information at srcity.org/call-for-artist. And again, the registration deadline is the 5th of January, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, may you please facilitate public comment on this item?
We are now taking public comment on item 8. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that period. I am seeing no public comment in the chamber.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, statements of abstention by council members. Looking, seeing none, we will now move to item 10, which are council member reports. Councilmember McDonald.
Just one quick report. I had a meeting this week with Comcast, and I wanted to remind community members of the program that they have for free or reduced internet for families that qualify. So if there's any questions, you can go on their website, but if there was something in particular that was necessary, I know we could help facilitate that. And it's for anyone that qualifies, not just around children and families. That was one of their programs that they had, but it's actually a give back program of about $30 a month. So I just wanted to announce that.
Thank you, and I believe there are no more reports. So Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate public comment on this item?
We are now taking public comment on item 10. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that period. I am seeing no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Moving to our consent. Madam City Clerk, can you please read the consent item?
Item 12.1 is a resolution, ratification of purchase order 170391 for 8 Ford F-350 truck cab and chassis to 72 Hour LLC, DBA National Auto Fleet Group under Sourcewell Cooperative Contract Number 091521-NAF.
Thank you. Bringing it back to council. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions on this item, we will now have public comment. We're at 12.1. Yes, sir.
We are now taking public comment on item 12.1. If you are in the chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that podium. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so. Seeing no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Stapp, can you please make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move item 12.1.
Second.
We have a motion made by Vice Mayor Stapp and a second by Councilmember McDonald. Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate, or can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Rogers? Councilmember Okrepke.
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp.
Aye.
Mayor Rogers.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you. It is not yet 5 o'clock, so we are going to skip over 13 for right now and go to our first report item, 14.1. Madam City Manager.
Item 14.1 is Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, BAFA, and 2024 Regional Affordable Housing Bond.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rogers and members of council. I'm Megan Bassinger, Director of Housing and Community Services, and with me is Nicole Del Fiorentino, Housing and Community Services Manager. Nicole is going to pull up the presentation, and I'm going to just lower my mask. Okay. All right. So tonight we'll be presenting an informational item on the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority and the proposed regional housing bond. This report is for your information and does not require action other than receiving the report. We do ask that you have a motion at the end of this item, if you are so inclined, directing staff to conduct the outreach for the expenditure plan, and we will get into that as the item proceeds. So to quickly, oh. The computer is frozen. One moment, please. Okay. So a quick overview of the information we will be covering is an overview of the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, known as BAFA, a summary of the regional housing bond measure that they are proposing, review of the expenditure planning process, next steps, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. So the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority is a regional organization that was created to help solve the affordability crisis throughout the Bay Area. It was formed in 2019, and its primary mission is to address the 3 Ps, which are production, preservation, and protection of housing. So how BAFA works is it was created through state legislation, and it sits in ABAG MTC. It's the first statewide organization that offers tools and solutions to address the challenges throughout the 9-county Bay Area. The core power they have is to raise revenue funding, and that's through the proposed bond measure that we'll be touching on in the coming slides. And they collaborate with cities and counties throughout the Bay Area to improve systems and fund housing. So some of the pilot programs that BAFA is currently developing and launching include the Doorway program, which is a portal to find housing. This is primarily occurring in the South Bay, but they will be expanding it in 2024. Developing an affordable housing pipeline by gathering information throughout the Bay Area and providing access to residents who are interested in learning more about affordable housing. A tax-exempt preservation program, which is similar to some of the efforts that we have through our affordability restrictions, and this assists properties in receiving tax exemptions, which improves affordability. A preservation pilot program, priority site development, and then rental assistance to prevent homelessness. So the primary purpose that we're before you tonight is to provide information on the upcoming housing bond. So BAFA has been planning this measure for quite a while and has been convening representatives throughout the Bay Area, and Councilmember Fleming is a member of the BAFA group. They've also been working with representatives and staff from cities and counties to provide peer support and help with the education process. So currently BAFA, oops, my clicker got a little too excited. BAFA is evaluating bond size looking between $10 to $20 billion to support regional housing needs. This requires voter approval, and they are looking at the November 2024 ballot for this measure. If it is approved, it would be dispersed over 10 plus years, and the current horizon is 10 to 15 years based on the estimated expenditure of the jurisdictions that would be receiving funding. The eligible uses of the proceeds we'll touch on in later slides, but they're set forth in the state legislation, and they will be monitored by BAFA. So related to the bond measure and also set to appear on the November 2024 ballot is a constitutional amendment known as ACA 1, which would change the voter threshold for affordable housing general obligation bonds, which is what the BAFA bond is, from 66% or 2/3 to 55%. So if ACA 1 is approved, then BAFA could be approved at 55%. But since they're appearing on the same ballot, if ACA does not pass, then the BAFA bond would need 2/3 approval in order to be approved. So as I touched on, depending on the size of the bond, and BAFA is currently working on how to, working on their polling on how to size it, the city of Santa Rosa is set to potentially receive $121 million, if it's a $10 billion bond, up to $242 million if it is a $20 billion bond. And this is a general obligation parcel tax, so it would appear on our parcel tax statements and be repaid over the course of time. And so as, oops, sorry. You can go back. As you can see, the 9 counties are listed. What's traditionally referred to as the big cities, Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose, are identified as recipients of direct allocations. And then Santa Rosa, which is noted in red at the bottom, and then also the city of Napa are set to receive direct allocations. And this is because of the portion of our regional housing needs allocation, RHNA, for Sonoma County. Santa Rosa has in excess of 30% of the very low income RHNA, and so that qualifies us for a direct allocation of bond proceeds if the bond is to pass. So BAFA legislation prescribes how the funds can be spent and how they will be allocated. If the bond is to pass and Santa Rosa receives funding, and this example here is for the $121 million, which is the $10 billion bond. You can see in the top, $121 million would be allocated to Santa Rosa. We can spend up to 5% on administration. And I will note there's a fair amount of administration that does accompany affordable housing, solicitation, document preparation, and then the ongoing compliance monitoring, which will be required for the duration of the projects. For rental housing, we require 55 years, and then ownership is generally a minimum of 30, but we can extend that beyond 30 years. So there is a long-term commitment to monitoring projects once they do receive affordable housing funding. And in the lower portion of the slide, you can see production, the minimum level is 52%. Preservation, which is one of the areas that the Housing Authority does currently assist, but additional funding is definitely needed and helpful. This would be to provide rehabilitation dollars to existing either affordable housing projects or to assist projects that are in existence with rehab needs and then restrict affordability. Tenant protections, which is a 5% allocation. This is a component that's not currently allowed by state law, but if there are changes, would be included, and this would help fund programs and access to services to help tenants in our community receive information and protections. And then finally, there's 28%, which is identified as flexible funding. So this would be something that we would explore through the expenditure plan process and identify how best to use that in Santa Rosa. The primary thrust of the bond, it would be to help address our RHNA goals. And we have 4,000 plus units we need to strive for, so production may be an area where we would want to see that. But again, that'll be something that we would evaluate during the expenditure plan process. So again, this just provides a chart of how those funds can be expended. And as you can see, BAFA on the right would retain 20%, and they administer some programs themselves, and then 80% of the bond proceeds would go to the cities and counties that were identified on one of the prior slides. So BAFA also involves a lot of regional coordination and accountability measures. A bond of this size, if it is to pass, will require a fair amount of oversight and compliance. So as I noted, it's governed by officials at ABAG MTC. There's an advisory committee that assists with identifying programs and steering this process forward. If the bond is to pass, every jurisdiction that is identified as receiving funds would need to prepare and submit an expenditure plan. Those would need to be reviewed to make sure they are in compliance with the enabling legislation of BAFA, and then would be publicly made available. There would be ongoing monitoring to make sure that the jurisdictions and BAFA itself is in compliance with the expenditure requirements, and that we are hitting the housing outcomes that are identified throughout the legislation. Also, if it was to pass, we would have local level oversight, so projects would need to be approved and reviewed locally, and then we would provide that information on to BAFA. So the overall investment goals of the bond is to support innovative and diverse, cost-efficient housing, have it be financially sustainable. So similar to how the Housing Authority in Santa Rosa currently structures its programs, our loans that we administer now are based on repayment, so it is a revolving loan fund, and I would anticipate seeing that with the BAFA funds so we can continually reuse the funds. Also, there'd be a focus on equity and environmental sustainability. So this is a quick overview of some of the information we've already touched on. 80% of the funds would go to the county of origin, and so that allocation that I touched on previously is based on the assessed value of the tax rolls for each jurisdiction. So that is what BAFA is using to help size the bond and to identify how the funds will be divided up among the jurisdictions. As I noted, San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco will receive allocations as the big cities within our 9-county region. And Santa Rosa and Napa can receive direct allocations because of our RENA proportion. So again, just to reiterate what the future requirements may be of the city if the bond is to pass, we would need to prepare an expenditure plan that meets the requirements of the percentages for production, preservation, and if approved protections, as well as identify how we would use the flexible funds. BAFA is encouraging that the projects prioritize extremely low and very low and low-income households to help meet the RENA goals for the jurisdictions. The funds can be used to up to 120% of area median income, but again, the focus would be on our lower income households. And as long as the expenditure plan satisfies all the requirements, it will be accepted by BAFA. So general rules that would accompany the funding would be all housing must be deed restricted. And as I noted, this is our common practice for all of the loans that we administer through the Housing Authority and funds that are directed through the City Council to the Housing and Community Services Department. All housing must be affordable up to 120% of AMI. Rental, ownership, and then interim housing would be eligible. And again, everything must tie back to the expenditure plan. So to give you a quick overview, and there's 2 slides that are fairly similar on the timeline, we are currently here in fall 2023, and this is the prescribed engagement process that BAFA has laid out. You're receiving the information today. The County Board of Supervisors received a similar item this morning. Marin County had a similar item last week. So everybody's trying to move in concert. It's receiving information at this point in time. ABAG and BAFA will vote in the spring whether or not to place an item on the ballot for November 2024, and that's when there'll be a more concerted public information effort. And then November 5th, 2024 is when the item is identified, being placed on the ballot. So our local timeline would be to proceed in a little bit more depth here. If council directs us to proceed with beginning an expenditure plan, outreach would be conducted in 2024. We can report back to the council as that process evolves. And then BAFA is currently identifying the expenditure plans of being due no sooner than 90 days following voter approval. So it would be February of 2025. So this process is still a fair ways out, but it's important to get it in front of all of the councils and boards of supervisors, as well as the public, to let them know what is coming up. And that concludes the presentation. Nicole and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that presentation. Looking to council to see if there are any questions, starting with Councilmember Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's a lot of information to digest. My first question is about the timeline of the bond and the parcel tax. Is there any limitation on, I know it's supposed to be distributed in 10 to 15 years-ish, and let's say $10 billion. If it reaches that, does this cease to exist, or is it ongoing? Does this ever expire?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the bonds will be issued in tranches, and each tranche is going to carry a 30-year term. So the property tax in the early years will be very small, about $2 or $3 per $100,000 of assessed value. And then because the taxes only have to cover the first issuance at that point, it will reach its peak when the bonds are outstanding at about $20 per $100,000 of assessed value. And then it'll start going back down after that. So if the last tranche is issued on year 10, after the voter approval, the tax will continue for another 30 years after that.
Okay, so that $10.62 rate that's in the report, that's just like an average of all that over the time period?
That is an estimated average, yes.
Okay. So, forgive me, I'm not an expert on affordable housing when it comes to applying for tax credits and stuff like that, but can you educate me a little bit? My understanding is that when applying for tax credits, funding from other sources and such as this kind of limits your ability as to what you can do in terms of what you can build. Is that correct?
So oftentimes in affordable housing, we see a layering of resources, tax credits being a larger component of some of the funding. Tax credits do have to comply with IRS regulations, and that requires that a minimum of 40% of the units be restricted to households at or below 60% of AMI. And so that's the minimum. It's also a highly competitive process at the state level. So in order for projects to be successful in the tax credit competitions, they need to greatly exceed the requirements. So the majority of projects that we see with tax credits lately are 100% affordable, providing very robust services and amenities to the proposed tenants, which is, hopefully this is the point of your question, which is why we are seeing affordable housing being on separate parcels. So we wouldn't see mixed income sites in a lot of these developments.
Okay, so how does this mesh with our goals for various areas, whether it be fully affordable or mixed income? Would this prohibit any sort of development of any of those kinds, or make it extremely difficult, I should say?
So with the tax credit program for financing, as well as other various state programs for funding of affordable developments, it's not necessarily prohibitive from the regulations to do mixed income developments, but the competitiveness of the tax credit program, as well as the expertise needed at the developer level, and the additional cost to manage those two separate funding sources for affordable units versus the market rate units adds to the overall cost of the developments in the mixed use developments. So it's ultimately up to the development community that we have here if they are willing to undertake a mixed income project like that, knowing that certain level of expertise and additional cost will be needed for those, versus the way that we have historically seen these types of projects in Santa Rosa, like the former Journey's End site, that overall ends up being a mixed income development by means of separating out the parcels to have one parcel with its fully market rate and then other parcels that are strictly affordable.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess, so would we be able to apply these funds to what is deemed affordable by design, or would they have to be specifically determined as affordable by statute or law?
These funds do require the deed restriction to keep them affordable, and so the affordable by design is not necessarily associated with having that 55-year deed restriction.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just a few more questions. I apologize. It's my understanding that for this to go into effect, it's not just Sonoma County that passes it. It has to be the entirety of the 9 counties that are incorporated in BAFA?
That is correct. My understanding is it needs to pass in each of the 9 counties and at the threshold that is dictated by that ballot. So again, if ACA 1 passes, it could be at 55%, but if ACA 1 does not pass, it would need to be 2/3.
Okay. Last question. Am I correct that there's multiple housing bonds expected to be on the ballot in 2024 throughout the state and our region?
So in 2024, just a quick survey of other bonds that are on the ballot. There is a statewide bond for $10 billion, which will be on the March 2024 ballot, and that's a general state housing bond to fund HCD programs. There is a mental health bond for housing and psychiatric assistance for homeless individuals. And then San Francisco in March of 2024 is also advancing their own $300 million affordable housing bond. And then Sonoma County has a sales tax for fire services, also on the March 2024 ballot.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Councilmember McDonald.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. My question actually was around the 2 different votes that Aguilar Curry was putting on there, Assemblymember Curry. She wants to lower the threshold for 55%, and then it really was, and just to be clear, there's 9 counties that have to pass this at the current rate of 2/3 unless that was to pass at the same time.
So ACA 1 will be a statewide measure to reduce the threshold from 2/3 to 55. Yes, so if that passes, then the BAFA measure, which is going to be on Bay Area ballots, so within the 9 Bay Area counties, could pass. If ACA 1 passes, it could pass at 55%, but if ACA 1 does not pass, it would need to pass at 2/3.
And then just for clarification on that, do they take the total voters cumulatively and make sure that we're at 2/3 of how many voters there are, or literally each county has to do the 66.6%? I just want to make sure we know our numbers. Not that I'm for this project and I want to make sure, but I just wanted to know how that worked. I've never heard of a regional vote like this, so it's new. It's a new one to me.
Actually, that is a very good question, and I don't believe we have the answer to that. I want to believe that it's the cumulative. Yeah.
I think it would be important to know so we know for our advocacy. It is
cumulative.
It is a cumulative. So if we had 100% of the votes here, it could offset one of the regions that may not reach that 2/3 vote.
We'll research that and come back with a clear answer for you. That's an excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions, council members? All right, seeing no additional questions, Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate public comment?
We are now taking public comment on item 14.1. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. As you approach the podium, please state your name if you choose to do so. Please go ahead once you're ready.
Dwayne DeWitt, Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group, formed over 30 years ago because this town and this county has never provided enough affordable rental residential housing, at least not for the last 50 years. I look over here at these teenagers and I think back to 50 years ago when I knew that most folks just getting out of high school could not afford any kind of apartment in Santa Rosa without the help of family and friends. So as you go forward with this, ask for the whole big panada. Go for $20 billion, and then ask also that there be stipulations in there. At one point on slide 12, it states the project to serve those most in need. And basically, there's too much wiggle room in this thing right now. There's no stipulation that says shall serve those most in need. And then on slide 14, 28% of this funding could be housing-related use. That's where the big wiggle room is, because there'll be people who try to manipulate that and say, oh, well, this is housing-related. I would ask that you folks look deeper and say, let's give higher percentages to the preservation amount and higher percentages to the situations of tenant support. That's who needs us most, is the low-income people. This is going to be marketed out there like you're helping the least among us, but if you can't specifically say this must do that, there's going to be a lot of people who are detractors. They're going to say, wait a minute, this is looking like a bit of a slush fund. 28%? That's a lot of money, folks. That's billions and billions of dollars. So there needs to be a situation in which we can protect the housing market and make it mixed income and make it be something where these young teens who they're advancing out into their careers, they can afford to live here in our town and our county. This is really a very important bond. I'm supportive of it in most ways, but I'm distrustful of the way government works. And I know that there'll be people who manipulate this, not necessarily to get more rental affordable residential housing. And that's the biggest need. It said here you wanted to put in 4,000 units. We always meet our numbers for above moderate. RENA numbers are always filled for that, but they haven't been filled for over 30 years for low income and over 40 years for extremely low income. You get to change that paradigm. You get to be the ones to make it all different. Thank you for doing that.
Please go ahead when you're ready.
No.
Sorry, go ahead now.
Thank you. Yes, Thomas Ells, civil and environmental engineer, and I was a municipal bond broker, so I sold millions of dollars of these kind of bonds, development bonds, non-rated bonds, highly rated bonds, state bonds, California general obligation bonds, all different types of millions of dollars in bonds. And it's a great idea. It's really good. Some of the technicalities that are important are, for instance, and I'm all for preservation of housing, but you know, if you're preserving affordable rental housing, that means it's already full of tenants. So they're already paying their rents. So that's great. All you need to do is fund the down payment to preserve that as affordable housing, the down payment amount, because the ongoing income is going to fund that on a monthly basis. It's going to fund those bonds. No problem. I mean, that's a highly rated bond. That's a terrific bond. I'm telling you, that would be a great bond. As far as the security for that, because it's got all the income from those. In the case of producing affordable housing, it's much more difficult. It's a tortuous process. And so, again, the bond funding can be a supplement, and is usually a supplement, and needs to be a supplement for the layering of the housing housing financing. And so that part, again, it doesn't have to be the whole thing. That can be a layer on top that is necessary to bridge the funding. Other things that it can do is help development, meaning pre-project development funding, right? It's very important for that. The engineering, some infrastructure, off-site infrastructure, the planning process is enormous. The overhead I mentioned here last time about agency executive costs, right? That's huge for an ongoing project that, for instance, Burbank or something like that, they have a lot of already. They own lots of houses here developed by my friend who is in hospice right now, John Johan Morgan was there many years as an engineer for them and developer, designer, and so on. They already have, but for anybody else that's new, they don't have that executive funding to deal with how many years it takes to actually produce a housing. So it's very important to have that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor Stapp. By the way, congratulations. Council members and staff, my name is Callum Meeks. I'm the Policy Director of Generation Housing. First and foremost, it is my understanding that is a percentage of all the voters that vote in the 9-county area. Just to share that little bit of information. And really my request of you is quite simple. We would like to see this brought to you in the form of a resolution, preferably sooner rather than later. Obviously, housing has reached an ultimate, well, we're at a crisis. It's quite plain and simple. And so moving on this is important. It sets the tone for how others might perceive how they should potentially vote, and maybe won't sway a wide share of our voters, but certainly it sends a strong message that our city is willing and able and ready to step up. And we know you all are leaders, and we've had really great conversations with you, and we're appreciative of everything you're doing. And so we're hoping you'll continue to be leaders and you'll bring a resolution forward soon so that we can vote on it and we can move forward and hopefully get this bond passed and work towards transforming the Bay Area and getting us back on track. With that, I always welcome any questions. Feel free to reach out. Thank you. Always appreciate your leadership and time, and have a wonderful evening.
Seeing no additional speakers on this item.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back to council for comments, but I did want to thank Megan and her team for all of your work, Generation Housing, and also thank our own Councilmember Fleming for all of her work and dedication to our community. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Councilmember Rogers.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And I also want to say thank you for everybody who's been working on this. We did have a chance to see a presentation also at the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, and it was presented to us as though a simple majority across the entire district, the votes across the entire district would matter, not each county also having to sign off on it, which was one of the main concerns that we heard from some of our smaller cities, is not just allowing Sonoma County to be used for our votes, but actually making sure that the other jurisdictions, not just Santa Rosa, who has a direct allocation, was able to compete for funding as well. And I think that when we talk about housing, we do talk about it in terms of regionality. We do talk about it in terms of needs. And so one of the things that I'll be really cognizant of as they're crafting it is not just that Santa Rosa gets its slice, but that Sonoma County as a whole, that Roanoke Park and Petaluma and Windsor and Healdsburg, that they all get what they need in it as well, and don't just have dollars that are siphoned off from Sonoma County to then go into other counties that might have more population than we do. I am supportive. I think that if we do bring forward a resolution that's supportive in concept, that really does express what we're trying to accomplish as a city and how this could help us to achieve those goals, I think that that'd be a good footing for us. I do think we also need more details as the expenditure plan plays out before any of us can fully sign off and say, yep, that's the measure that for sure we are backing and that we want to make sure voters vote for. But I think at this point, being supportive in concept really aligns with our city's goals.
Are there any other comments from council members? All right, Councilmember Fleming, can you make your comment and then roll into your motion?
Can I
make the comment? Yeah.
I do need the ordinance pulled up. If somebody has that, my Granicus is down, that'd be fantastic. So I'm just going to focus on the couple of comments. I want to first start by saying thank you to people for giving us your feedback. I've been working on this with the staff at MTC for quite some time now, and I'm going to be part of a small working group going forward to actually craft this. So if you have things like should, shall, may, must, please email me and let me know where you think we ought to make adjustments, because this is not something that we want to do to the people. This is something we want to do with the people and for the people. And the reason why we want to do this don't just extend to simply building affordable housing. What is buried in this that's really remarkable is based on this New York Housing Fund model, where the 20% that gets remitted to the Housing Authority essentially creates a banking function. And that banking function means that every time the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority originates a loan, that fee that normally would go to a private firm and get paid out to private shareholders gets reinvested back in the bank. And what that allows us to do is spend that money on operating expenditures for things like permanent supportive housing and other types of supports for folks who are acutely low income, people who don't qualify at the 30 to 60% area median income. So that's one of the most exciting and powerful pieces of this. I want to address another point about the percentages and what gets allocated to what. They're not set in stone forever. They're a 5-year term, and then they can be readjusted based on needs. And we'll be listening carefully to what the public has to say and also what the sub-regional issues are. And that brings me to another point, which is I believe and have been advocating for greater communication. While Santa Rosa, it might seem like we get ours in this situation because we're a direct allocation jurisdiction, it doesn't really make sense for us to be operating in a silo. And I've been working closely with Supervisor Rabbit as well as other cities in the area to make sure that we develop, not just in Sonoma County, but probably in the North Bay, the 4 North Bay counties of Solano, Napa, and Marin, to make sure that we don't create or exacerbate a jobs housing imbalance. We don't want another Highway 37 situation, which is, distinct in and of itself, but we don't want to create a situation where we have a lot of people coming here for housing and then having to go elsewhere for jobs. We want to make sure that we develop in ways that are safe. Of particular interest to me is making sure that we build in ways that don't exacerbate our natural disaster risk, so that we're not building in floodplains, that we're not incentivizing growth in wild and urban interfaces, and that we're always keeping in mind what makes sense environmentally and economically and for the people. A couple of things I heard that I want to touch on is the 28%. First of all, there will be money that goes towards planning. We have a great planning team. We're a good mid-sized city. We have robust staff, but it's never enough. And the smallest cities really do need money to make sure that they plan and plan well. And again, I'd like to see a sub-regional plan developed that addresses not just the needs of Santa Rosa and Sonoma County, but the North Bay. Another thing that money can be used for is for the development of services that need to go along with housing. You can't just put, 1,000, 2,000 homes in an area and not have park services. A lot of times a big barrier for developers in making and putting in housing is the required upgrades to the sidewalks, to the streets, to undergrounding, utility wires. So a lot of this is not a giveaway. It's so that the housing actually does get built and the community is not worse off for the wear of the housing that goes in, so that we're building complete communities. And then the last thing that I just want to emphasize is this communication and trust. I know a lot of cities and counties struggle with trust, and I've been working to increase the strength of the language around the communication plans that the cities have to have with the county. This is, again, not an issue in Santa Rosa, but all of the jurisdictions, all of the 8 other cities in the county have to work directly with the county, and Santa Rosa does not. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that Santa Rosa ought to have to plan with, I'm glad we get our own, and I'm not looking to have to ask the county for how we ought to allocate it, but I do think that we should have a communication with all 10 jurisdictions, the 9 cities and the county. And I think that the other cities in our district, in our county, need to have a greater degree of confidence that the Board of Supervisors is not just, the language as it stands is that they shall listen and they shall confer, but I do agree that we need something stronger than just listening, because the trust level is not there. And I do believe that it can be rebuilt, and that our Board of Supervisors and our councils across the county have the willingness to get this done right, and that we can use this as an opportunity to repair. But if anybody has any thoughts or ideas or input about how we can operationalize that improvement, I'm really looking forward to hearing about it. My email is vfleming with 1M at srcity.org, and I look forward to your input. It will go straight to the top on this one. It's my pleasure to bring forward a recommendation by Housing and Community Services Department that the Council, 1, receive the information about the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority and the 2024 Regional Affordable Housing Bond, and 2, by motion, direct staff to conduct outreach and develop an expenditure plan outlining the use of bond proceeds returning to the City Council at a later date for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Fleming and a second made by Councilmember Okrepke. Madam City Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thank you. It is a little bit past 5, so we're going to go back up to item 13, which is our first public comment on non-agenda matters. Madam City Clerk, can you please facilitate public comment?
We are now taking public comment on item 13, non-agenda matters. This is a time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes, and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. We will take 12 speakers under item 13. If we have more than 12 public comments on item 13, the remaining speakers will be afforded an opportunity to speak on item 17, non-agenda matters. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so.
And I would like to use the overhead if I can.
Okay, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So I just wanted to go back and remind the council of what we were talking about last time, which is Hearn Avenue and the misalignment of Kiwanis Springs and Yolanda. That it go back, if not, decades, if not more than that. And remind the council of the situation along 101 is that there were only 3 crossings, Todd Road, Hearn, and the Corby Baker overcrossing, of which there were only 6 lanes available to cross east to west of 101. And when you replace Hearn here, it's going to a great extent in order to keep these lanes operating while you make 2 lanes, remove the existing 2 lanes, and add 2 more lanes. The effect of that is destroying an existing overcrossing and adding an overcrossing, totaling 3, rather than what really should have been done originally, conceptually, and was, I mentioned before, it ends up being bicentennial, gets done instead of this through machinations. The point being is you have the opportunity to add a 33% increase in the number of crossings. By adding 1 to 3 is a 33% increase, as opposed to just keeping it the same number of crossings. And by adding 4 lanes, let's say you add 4 lanes, which you're planning to add 4 lanes. If you add 4 lanes, that's a 66% increase of the existing 6 lanes of overcrossing. So you would add 66% instead of adding 2 lanes, which should barely be 30 33% to those. So the question I would ask, and hope you would ask, is how can we do this? How can this be done? And I sent an email to you of Tolk's, I'll try to pronounce his name, Okashani, I believe, Okashanki, who is the Secretary of Transportation. And I met him down at the North Petaluma station of SMART when that was being put in. And this guy is a great guy. This guy, he is a very impressive guy. I didn't know his bio. When I met him, I said, I'm a civil environmental engineer. And he looked at me and he said, oh, get my information from his person, his secretary person. He's on the, he's on the...
Sorry, the timer's not showing because of your, that lectern, but the 3 minutes did run. Do we have any additional speakers on this item? Please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I wanted to thank Councilmember Fleming for her comments tonight, and I think it's a good idea that she's given out her email asking people to get back with her with these ideas on that funding. I came to talk about 909 Humboldt Street. Basically, over a decade ago, a speed limit sign was put on the telephone pole in front of 909 Humboldt Street because there was traffic calming efforts going forward there. The idea was that there would be this solar-operated speed limit sign. It would show the folks how fast they were going, get them to slow down. Well, for the last month, a van from Alaska has been parked in front of that, and it hasn't moved, and that sign is inoperative. And I noticed nobody seemed to care. And I thought, well, that could actually help Roseland, because Hearn Avenue is basically a raceway. It's a speedway. People are out there all the time, burning rubber, going fast, not caring about things. Luckily, occasionally some motorcycle police officers come by and some tickets are issued. But if you were to put that solar-operated speed limit sign there on some of the poles, we could have a little bit more safety. Last week, you heard the capital improvement program for the transportation, and it pointed out there'll be a signal put in at the corner of Burbank Avenue and Hearn Avenue. It may take sometimes 6 to 8 months in the future. You could move that speed limit sign over there to Hearn Avenue in just a day if you got your crew on it. So please look into that. I know people along Hearn Avenue that live near Southwest Community Park, and they would welcome that speed limit indicator. You also have portable speed limit indicator signs that you could put out there. We really need it because people have essentially adopted an attitude like they don't care, and that's where they can come out and drag race. So early in the evening, when the commute has lowered, people become a bit more aggressive, and they come out there and they race, and it's dangerous. Somebody's going to get hurt. We said this in the past about people getting hurt before Patrick Jerome Scott, was killed out on Bellevue Avenue decades ago. And we made a point of saying you need to have the safety beforehand. So please do something about this as soon as possible so none of our youth end up being a casualty. As a matter of fact, in the past, 3 or 4 of the pedestrian and bicycle casualties have been over in the Roseland area. So this is a perfect time. Speed limit signs on Hearn Avenue. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you. I'm seeing no additional comments on this item.
Thank you. Bear with me. We're going to take the agenda out of order a bit, and we're going to go to our first public hearing, which is 15.1. Madam City Manager.
Item 15.1 is a petition to expand the downtown residential permit parking zone to include the 300 block of Lincoln Street situated between Washington Street and Morgan Street. I think you need to turn your mic on, please.
that better?
Thanks, Chad.
Is that better? That sounded
Yes,
loud
better.
to me. We're going to talk about the petition to expand the downtown residential permit parking zone to include the 300 block of Lincoln Street. So currently up to 300 Lincoln, the downtown residential permit parking zone was established in May 27th of 2003. And the council city code section 1144-050 has established our process that we have to follow for folks who want to enter the. So a petition has been received from the residents of the 300 block of Lincoln Street to expand the downtown residential permit parking zone. The zone will have a 2-hour time limit with limited parking from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the residents may purchase permits exempting them from the time limits. So you can see the proposed expansion right now for the residential permit zone. The brown is the existing permitted zone, and the aqua is the addition to the zone. So the benefit approval of this item will provide relief to the residents, allowing the park beyond the posted time limits in the permit zone, and the 2-hour time limit will serve as a deterrent to long-term spillover parking, freeing up spaces for the residents. It is recommended by the Finance Department that the council by resolution approve the petition to expand the downtown residential permit parking zone to include the 300 block of Lincoln Street between Washington Street and Morgan Street. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Looking to council to see if there are any questions on this item. And seeing none, we will now open the public hearing. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We are now taking public comment on item 15.1. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that period. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so. Are you? Yes, go ahead, and that podium's fine. Are you? Please go ahead once you're ready.
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My name is Andy Graham. I live at 316 excuse me, Lincoln Street, right in the middle of the zone that's being discussed. And I feel for the most part I am in favor of it. I just want the record to state that I don't like the idea of paying a permit fee to park in front of my own home that I pay taxes on. It's just one of those. It may seem, maybe that's petty of me to say, but it's just more of a principle thing. I don't expect my opinion here to change that, but I just wanted to be on the record that I live there. I've been there 13 years, and I plan on living there a long time, and I don't like the idea of having to pay to park in front of my own house, so I don't wonder if there's a way to waive that or if there's any possibility. I would just want that. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted that to be on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no additional public comment on this item.
Can you tell us a little bit about the parking fee, like how much it is, how that works?
Yeah, of course. So the fee is only $20 for a year. It's an annual permit. That $20 includes guest permits for it, contractor permits are all included in there. So we try to make it as easy as possible for these folks, and really it's just to try to help make sure that the spots in front of their homes stay open. So the $20 fee covers a lot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we will now close our public hearing. Councilmember Rogers, if there are no questions from council, can you make a motion?
Yeah, and with respect to the fee, I think that is something that we can take a look at some point. So I'll throw that out there. but I will introduce a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa expanding the downtown residential permit parking zone to include the 300 block of Lincoln Street situated between Washington Street and Morgan Street within the downtown residential permit parking zone, and waive further reading of the text.
Second. We have a motion made by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember McDonald. Council, are there any comments? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here in that presentation. All right, we will now continue with 15.2, which is our second public hearing.
Item 15.2 is adoption of revised animal services fees.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Jason Nutt, Assistant City Manager. I am joined here by Brian Whipple and Michelle Renee from Sonoma County. They'll be providing you with a presentation relating to the county animal services and fees that are being increased in order to cover costs for service, or fee adjustments that are being made in order to ensure there's nearly full cost recovery, and they'll go into more detail about that. As a public hearing, I wanted to let you know that we did do a public notice, let folks in the community understand which fees were going to be adjusted and how they were being adjusted, what the current rate is and what the proposed rate is. So that was put into the newspaper on November the 25th, and therefore we feel we've provided some adequate notice so that we can engage in this discussion in more depth. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Brian Whipple.
Good evening, Brian Whipple, Director of Animal Services for Sonoma County Animal Services. We actually did go through a pretty in-depth fee study over the last year. We hadn't had one that really brought out what our services are and what they actually cost us to do and provide those services. I think that, what we'll see is that we may be increasing some fees, but there are also fees that are decreasing. Through some work with an outside vendor, we're able to actually decrease the cost for a dog license, which is basically dropping, say, an unneutered male dog or an unspayed female dog from $100 down to $20, which is much more from the efficiencies that we've created with this new group called DocuPad, and it's really created some good benefits for the community. Our mission and what we do is we protect, animals from people and people from animals. And, a lot of what we do is we investigate animal cruelty, we educate the public, and a lot of our job is education. We would rather get compliance than come in with the stick. We'd rather come in with a carrot and gain that compliance. We also want to reduce pet overpopulation, because I will say that our shelter is extremely full right now, and that is a direct result of too many animals in the community and a lot of the pandemic puppies that folks got over those years that now we're seeing come through our doors on a daily basis. Nationwide, there's been a 10% increase in animals going into shelters and a 4% decrease of animals leaving shelters. So we're getting, more animals in and not enough for leaving through adoption or other positive outcomes, say a transfer or adoption, those types of things. And like I said, we contracted with DocuPet in 2022 in order to be more efficient and, went to a more online web-based solution to create a better way of doing the dog licensing. There was some growing pains because it is all online, so there are some things that go along with that, but it has actually, increased our compliance with it, as well as within the county area, the unincorporated area, we have seen more compliance because the fees have been lowered as well, which has been a great piece for us. Wolfer Consulting was the group that we worked with. Animal Services isn't a full cost recovery type of business. If we charge too much, people aren't going to come and get their animals out of the shelter. We want to remove every roadblock we can to get animals back with their people, and by doing so, it's really working with the community. Whether it's if somebody's just struggling financially, we'll work with them on those fees and payment plans if that's what it comes down to. We just want to remove those roadblocks, get animals back home, and create better outcomes for everybody that comes through our door. The changes in our business structure is that in adding some of the fees, because we do see the amount of work that goes into some of the different pieces of our work. So say a dangerous dog investigation. Those take a really long time, a lot amount of staff time to do those investigations. And that takes a really heavy toll on the operation, because those folks are dedicated to making sure that piece is taken care of. And it's a lot of investigation that goes into that. Can be going back and forth through court multiple times, or going back to a location to collect more evidence on what's gone on. And as you can see here, these are some of our statistics and our response time to those, and in order to service the community. And this is just for Santa Rosa calls for service right here that you're seeing. A police or fire assist, over the last fiscal year, there was 100 that we responded to, and we got there in 18 minutes. And that's definitely a good response time there. Do we want to improve that? Absolutely. And that is our goal, to be able to do that. And here's just kind of a listing of what some of our fees are and were and what they're going to. Like I said, we're not full cost recovery, because if we did go full cost recovery, we would be inundated and we wouldn't be able to operate. Again, want to make sure that we're being fair to the community and it's equitable so that everybody can actually come through our door and work with us to get their pets back. And this is what our boarding fees look like over the year, and what the change will come to. And then the dog license, as I stated before, we want to be able to make this more equitable so that folks can do this and be compliant with state code and with county and Santa Rosa code. And this is where you see our sharpest increase is in the dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dog. Like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that also is with the city attorney's office, the amount of time that's invested in that as well. So there's a lot that goes into those types of investigations. And, it is recommended by us and the city manager's office that you approve these fees. We're hoping that comes to resolution this evening.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back to council for questions, but I did have a question. On one of your slides, it said you will improve fairness and equity. I just wanted to know, how will you do that, and can you give me an example of where you feel you need to improve?
I want to say, over the years, there's been struggles with reaching certain communities and really getting our message out and understanding that we're there to help. Once the city, annexed Roseland, they gave us a lot of opportunity to be able to get more in depth, to speak to the community. We do want to be able to hold more community meetings and be able to say, hey, we're not here to punish, we're here to help, and we want to be the resource for the entire city and for the entire county. We may not have a service that we provide, but we sure know who does, and we want to connect those people with those services. And being able to do that across the board with everyone, whether it's working with our behavioral health units or with just, any other, group that's out there, whether it's a nonprofit or another county or city organization, we want to be able to use those resources for all.
Second question, if someone finds a dog, are they able to drop it off at your facility, or
Yes.
where do they go?
Yeah, our address is 1247 Century Court. It's up off of Airport Boulevard. And, you know, our hours of operation for the public are 10 to 5. And that's all, and our adoption hours are 12 to 5. But anytime during that, and also if it's an off hour, you know, we have officers that are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The overnight and those days are more emergency-based response. But during those days, if you have a dog that, you know, ends up in your backyard, which does happen quite often, we can have an officer come out and collect that animal as well.
And I know we're talking about increasing some of your fees, but I did have a question. Sometimes people are hospitalized for reasons that they have no control over, and a big fear that they have is that if their animals go, they won't be able to get them back, and so they don't want to take care of either their physical or mental health. Is there something, in their low income, so is there something to assist with that?
Absolutely. We actually do have hardship boarding programs and a low-cost program, both for housing and for spay-neuter. So if somebody does end up in the hospital and they can't control that, we'll take that animal in for a minimum of 7 to 14 days, depending, for no cost whatsoever. And then once that period ends, it can be negotiated. I wouldn't say that we hold anyone's feet to the fire when it comes down to that part of it, because again, we want to make sure, you know, everybody has an opportunity to get their pets. But those programs have been just greatly successful. They are based upon, you know, our limited housing, and so that can be difficult sometimes, but we've been able to make a lot of accommodations on that front, and we do work with some domestic violence groups as well to be able to provide emergency housing as needed when that comes up.
Perfect. It is great to hear that. Thank you so much. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for all the information you're providing on what the county is doing. That's really important work. I wasn't aware that the shelter population was increasing as quickly as it is, so thank you for that stat. On a slightly different note, though, I was looking at the license fee chart. Suppose that you had a dog. Suppose someone had a dog who was both extra cute and really, really good. Are there additional discounts that could be had in the licensing?
If we can use pictures, possibly.
All right. But more seriously, thank you for all you're doing.
Sure. Thank you.
Looking to council, it doesn't appear that there are any more questions, so we will now open our public hearing. Madam City Clerk.
We're now taking public comment on item 15.2. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes, and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. As you approach the podium, please state your name for the record if you choose to do so. Will you be making a public comment?
Seeing no one approaching the podium to make a public comment, we will now close the public hearing. And are there any comments from council?
I just want to say thank you so much for being here. When the mayor told me we were going to have a public hearing on the increase in fleas, I thought she meant City Hall and the issues that we've had over the last couple of months. So thank you for clarifying that it was fees, not fleas.
This is one of those moments when I wish I skipped you. All right, so we're going to go over to Councilmember Alvarez to make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, here's the response from the question that the mayor posed about the extended stay and the services that are being provided. I have to say, I wish that humans treated humans as well as you treated the animals. So I definitely have to commend your efforts. And with that said, I do want to put forth a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa approving and adopting the Sonoma County Animal Services revised fees and waive further reading of the text.
Motion made by Councilmember Alvarez and second by Councilmember Rogers. Madam City Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Rogers? Aye. Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp,
Aye.
Mayor Rogers.
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for the presentation. We're going to go back up to 14.2. Madam City Manager.
Item 14.2, introduction of ordinance adding Chapter 9-30 to the Santa Rosa City Code pertaining to hazardous vegetation and fuels management.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor, members of the council. My name is Paul Lowenthal, Division Chief Fire Marshal, joined by Adam Mabel from the City Attorney's Office, bringing forward the Hazardous Vegetation and Fuel Management Ordinance. Also in the chambers is Chief Building Official Jesse Oswald, who is part of the development of this ordinance, as well as members from water, parks, departments as well. The Hazardous Vegetation and Fuel Management Ordinance is a current goal and objective of ours for council for this fiscal year. It's also been a goal of ours under the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and was identified as a priority for calendar year 2023. So currently what we have is our wildland urban interface that in some cases has had measures and steps taken by the community and the city, and other parts of it that have not, where ultimately we're trying to get the entire community to do their part to mitigate the risks of future wildfires. I remember sitting here providing a council update after the Glass Fire and hearing comments from the council that we can't allow another disastrous wildfire to affect our community. And since then, we've been committed to taking measures and steps to help prevent that, and that's exactly why we're here. What we've seen since 2017 is parts of our wildland urban interface, which impacts roughly 9,000 properties throughout areas that we refer to as the Bennett Valley portion of the city, which is in between Summerfield and Annandale State Park, Montecito and Fountain Grove, which primarily extends roughly from the Flamingo to the north city limits and to Brush Creek Road and over towards Mendocino Avenue, the Skyhawk area, as well as the southern part of Oakmont, in between Oakmont Drive and Annandale State Park. In areas that were impacted by the wildfires, both the 17 Tubbs, Nuns, and then 2020 Glass Fire, we're seeing vegetation and fuels come back worse today than they were pre-2017. That's with the change of ecology that we're seeing, as well as a lot of the dead fuels that have accumulated as a result of those fires. Went ahead and selected some pictures over the next slide that just show what we're trying to address. This is an example of a lot of the hazardous vegetation along what we refer to as one of our evacuation routes. And then the second picture also shows mulch, which in this particular case is a stringy fibrous mulch, commonly referred to as gorilla hair, which proved to be quite challenging for us during the Glass Fire, when we fortunately had a lot more firefighters mobilized to help deal with this, but that's not always the case, and we saw the challenges of the destruction that it led to, and in some cases the extended amount of time that resources were tied up dealing with it to prevent additional loss. The top picture shows one property owner that's done their part, but then is directly impacted by another property owner that hasn't done their part. And you'll see how we're going to attempt to address this. The last two pictures, as well as another example of, in this case, Scotch broom that's growing out of control in an area in Fountain Grove that used to be once oak and grass woodlands, and again, with the loss of tree canopy, it has changed our ecology and the growth of the fuels within our community. So what we're proposing is to take the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which has been identified as kind of the framework of our vegetation management program, to lay out the goals and objectives of this ordinance. And keep in mind that the Community Wildfire Protection Plan involved a lot of community involvement, which is exactly what it's for. And so a lot of the action items that came out of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan were incorporated into the development of this ordinance. We also were fortunate that we received a $500,000 from Community Development Block Grants Mitigation Program that will assist in educating and providing outreach and materials to educate the public in exactly what this means as some of these new rules go into effect, because ultimately our goal is education way before we get into actual enforcement. So getting right into what the ordinance covers. Currently, wildland urban interface or defensible space inspections are only, sorry, let me back up. Currently, defensible space is only required by law within very high fire hazard severity zones that have been mapped by CAL FIRE. That represents a very small portion of our overall wildland urban interface. The first step and the first goal of this ordinance will be now to require all properties with structures within the wildland urban interface comply with defensible space. And so we will institute education, outreach, and inspections of those properties as we move around the city to make sure that they're all in compliance with the standards. The second thing that we will do is what has been a challenge that both fire and PED have heard about since the fires is the volume of dead trees within the burn scars. One thing that we've realized that there's really no way that we're going to be able to address all of the dead trees within the city, at least while I'm here, and probably a lot of other people are here, but that's one of the issues that we're seeing across California with just the volume of wildfires that are taking place, is you have to try and figure out which ones to address first, at least as we kick off a program like this. And so what it's going to redo is require the removal of dead trees along right-of-ways within 30 feet of a right-of-way, along property lines where we're seeing the potential of dead trees affecting one property to another, and also, again, within defensible space zones where it's an added fuel load. So this are what we've identified as our highest threats, and the requirement will go into effect 365 days after this ordinance goes into effect, which gives people time to start making plans to address those trees. We're already seeing a lot of them take place. The volume of trees in these areas is definitely down from when acting director Oswald and Jesse and I first did the analysis following the 2017 fires. The third item is it will require the removal of invasive species, primarily Scotch broom and French broom, from, again, certain areas identified by the ordinance, which again includes along evacuation routes and public right-of-ways within 30 feet, along property lines and away from defensible space zones. We just conducted a field management project in this Thomas Lake Harris open space to remove Scotch broom and French broom on city-owned property using vegetation management funds that were allocated by council, and found that some of that Scotch broom and French broom is upwards of 14 to 15 feet in height, which is obviously a concern of ours and what's leading to this step. This also will apply to parcels, vacant parcels, and undeveloped vacant parcels within the wildland interface, and it's primarily around the boundaries of those properties. We already have weed abatement ordinance requirements where it requires them to be in compliance and cut the fuels within 30 feet of property lines, and this will expand upon that and help provide that level of protection. And the final thing that it'll do is require the removal of fibrous stringy mulch, which is again commonly referred to as gorilla hair mulch, within 30 feet of a structure, which will improve the defensible space around that home. So ultimately, it is our recommendation that the council adopt the ordinance adding chapter 9-30 to the Santa Rosa City Code pertaining to hazardous fuel and vegetation management ordinance, to reduce the wildfire risk within our community and minimize the threats to property and the environment. And again, I'm here if you have any questions, as well as Adam from the City Attorney's Office and Jesse on behalf of PED.
Thank you for that presentation, and I see Chief Westrop here, and I also want to thank you guys for your commitment and your team's commitment to keeping our community safe. It does help us to sleep a little better at night knowing that you guys are doing everything you can do to keep us safe. So looking at council members to see if there are any questions. We have no questions. So Madam City Clerk, may you please facilitate public comment?
We are now taking public comment on item 14.2. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. Please State your name for the record if you choose to do so. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland. There's a curious approach here. Hopefully this ordinance is applying throughout the city, not just in the wildland, urban interface areas. Hopefully it's anywhere where there's a chance for underbrush and shrubs to become overgrown and be next to residential areas that then could be prone to a type of a fire. This is especially important on city-owned lands. I was hoping that perhaps the city would be more proactive in limbing trees and pulling out underbrush in areas that might be hazardous in certain communities. Thank you.
Seeing no additional comment for this item.
All right, bringing it back to council and seeing no comments from council members. Councilmember Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I will move an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa adding Chapter 9-30 to Title 9 Health and Safety of the Santa Rosa City Code pertaining to hazardous vegetation and fuels management, and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Okrepke and a second by Councilmember McDonald. Madam City Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much for the presentation. Moving on to item 14.3, Madam City Manager.
Item 14.3, acceptance of FY 2022-2023 Measure O Annual Report, Oversight Board name change, and amendment to the implementation plan.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Veronica Connor. I'm the Budget and Financial Analysis Manager and also the Staff Liaison for Measure O. Today we're going to be presenting to you the Measure O 22-23 Annual Report. But before I turn it over to the departments, I'd like to go over with you a couple administrative items that we covered at our most recent COC meeting. So first of all, we met with the COC in November of this year. We meet with them annually in the fall to go over the annual report, which covers in detail the expenditures and revenues of Measure O. Measure O was passed back in 2004, but was renewed in 2022 by Measure H. So there was confusion about what we call the item. Is it Measure O? Is it Measure H? So we discussed the opportunity for a name change. We wanted to move away from a more generic tax measure name. So after some deliberation and discussion with the Citizens Oversight Committee, they voted on the name the Public Safety and Prevention Tax Citizens Oversight Committee. So for short, we'll call this the PSAP COC. So this does require council approval by vote. So for the remainder of the presentation, we'll still be calling this Measure O. The name hasn't changed yet, but should council approve the name change, when you hear from us again, we will be the PSAP COC. Second, at the COC meeting last month, we also discussed a change to the implementation plan. You may recall in the spring when we bring the budget forward, there's usually an implementation plan for Measure O. This has been a multi-year plan showing the detailed expenditures for each department. The implementation plan was part of the Measure O ordinance and was originally just a one-year plan providing more detail on expenditures. However, this was changed in 2015 to be a 10-year plan to account for the winding down and expiration of the tax measure. So with the renewal of Measure H, the Citizens Oversight Committee expressed a desire to change this back to a one-year plan. The multi-year plan didn't seem to be serving a purpose. It was confusing. The multi-year planning was arbitrary. There's a lot that can happen in many years. So they voted to change the plan back to a one-year plan, and this also does require council votes with 6 affirmative votes. There's an attachment on this item that shows an example format of the implementation plan. The numbers in there are not actual numbers that we're adopting. It's just an example. It's just the format that you will see going forward. So on this item, in addition to approving the annual report, there are two resolutions, one to change the name, the other to change the implementation plan. And so before we move on to the annual report, I'm happy to answer any questions related to the name change or implementation plan if there are any. And if not, I will be happy to turn it over to the police department.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers and City Council. My name is John Cregan, our Chief of Police, and I'm joined today with our Administrative Services Officer, Pam Lawrence, and we're going to go through the police presentation. Go to our next slide there.
Good evening, everybody. Pam Lawrence, ASO for the Police Department. I'll go over the expenditures and then hand it off to Chief Cregan. This slide shows the beginning fund balance of $1.9 million. I'm sorry, is that better? Is that better? Thank you. Our revenues were $4.8 million, and we had a loss of $7,404. Our expenditures for the year were $3.9 million, leaving us an ending fund balance of $2.8 million. This shows where those expenses happened this last year. As you can see, the majority was in our salaries and benefits for our 16 employees funded by Measure O. We also had $388,000 in services and supplies, which included $155,000 for our Axon Fleet program in-car cameras that Chief will talk about a little bit more. We also had our maintenance for our vehicles that are included in Measure O, our fuel for those vehicles, and our replacement plan for those vehicles. You can see a small slice of that pie up there that is for land. That 1% is for some documentation for the purchase of our Roseland substation, which we purchased this fiscal year. This shows our expenses and revenues year over year since the beginning of the program. As you can see, our expenses have been outpacing our revenues year over year, except for that slight dip in 21-22 where we removed 3 officers from this program. But we do anticipate our revenues not meeting our needs in the future years.
All right, thank you. And I'll go quickly through a highlight of how we're using these resources for this last fiscal year. We have 16 funded positions for this last fiscal year. 11 of those are sworn full-time employees. We have 1 lieutenant that manages our traffic division, our downtown enforcement, and a really important part of all of our special events, such as at the fairgrounds, the Rose Parade, and all these other things like that that we have going on across the city. 1 sergeant dedicated specifically to our downtown enforcement team, and 9 police officers, and those police officers are split into 3 buckets. 5 are enhancements to our patrol, so they add to our patrol resources going out to 911 calls every day. 2 are dedicated motor officers or traffic officers that are going out handling not only investigating collisions and fatal collisions, but also doing traffic enforcement. And 2 are part of our downtown enforcement team. Then we have 5 civilian positions or full-time employees. And the first 2 are for our field and evidence technicians. They process all of our crime scenes. And when they're not processing crime scenes and testifying in court, that they're handling more low-level reports such as vehicle collisions and no suspect burglaries of the such. Same with our community service officers. They're not able to process crime scenes, but they go to the lower priority calls of parking citations across the city, graffiti, vandalisms, things like that, traffic collisions, and no suspect burglary reports. A communication supervisor that handles our 911 dispatch center. We'll see later that we had over 246,000 calls that came into our 911 dispatch center. So the supervision is critical to make sure that we maintain our high level of service with our dispatchers. And 1 police technician, which works in our records division, which processes the thousands of police reports and citations and other mechanical things that come through our processing. Next slide, please.
Some of the things that we're really excited about is that we were able to do directly with Measure O funds is to be able to fund the first in Sonoma County that we have all 64 of our marked patrol vehicles are now equipped with the Axon Fleet program, which includes from the front 260-degree view of camera. So we're recording everything, both visual, it has both audio and video recording, and anyone who's transported in one of our vehicles, so in the rear passenger area, whether it be a suspect going to jail or whether it be a victim or other community member getting transported, full video and audio on that. And I think that's really important for 3 prongs that we've talked about. Number 1 is the transparency for our community, that we can see that the body-worn cameras can be rather limiting at times. So now we have a lot more view on traffic stops, pursuits, or community contacts on the side of the road, and then also anyone who's transported in our car. So the transparency, accountability, that if we say something that we don't like that's going on with our officers, that we have the ability to hold them accountable. And then for the liability, that many times that we're seeing, whether it be collisions or pursuits, now we have a very clear view of exactly what occurred and able to use that in any court proceeding. So that's been a big exciting enhancement that we were able to done and work throughout this last year to get all of those installed, and now all vehicles are installed. We talked about some of the enhanced patrol services that we're able to provide with the 9 officers assigned to our Field Services Division through Measure O. And we've really been focusing on some of those things with the key area of traffic safety and violence reduction. And we're seeing improvements in each of those. Last year we had 8 fatal collisions in the city of Santa Rosa, and I'm happy to report we still had 2 fatal collisions, which is tragic, but is a significant reduction from 8 to 2. And the same thing that we're seeing reduction in our shootings, a reduction in our homicides. Last year we had 12 homicides. We still have had a busy year with 9 homicides this year, but we're hoping to finish out this year with a 20% reduction, and we're seeing shootings down 13% right now too. So we're seeing a reduction, but still more work needs to be done in this area without a doubt. One of the ones that we're really excited about, and council played a key role in this, of helping us not only with the Measure O resources, but with our sideshow ordinance. And we were seeing sideshows of being almost an every weekend occurrence in the city of Santa Rosa, and community members were very frustrated about it. So far in 2023, we've actually only had 1 sideshow in the city of Santa Rosa, and was shut down within 10 minutes. So we've come close to eliminating this behavior in our city, not only through some of the enforcement strategies that are supported by Measure O, but some of the outside support as well. And so we're really excited about that, and we're going to continue our focus on that. And the same thing with some of our violence reduction efforts. What we've really talked a lot before with our council and get strong agreement is we know we're not going to arrest our way a lot of these issues rated with the guns and the violence and even with the sideshows. So we really partnered with the Violence Prevention Partnership on so many efforts, and we've really made them embed it with our community policing efforts and really trying to work with them, whether it be the gang summits they're setting up or any other programs. And they've been such a key partner with us to kind of dive deep into some of the root causes of what's going on in our streets. Next slide, please. If it comes. Sorry, it's moving a little slowly. Looks like our computer froze over here. We'll see if we can get it cracking again. No? Oh, there it goes. Well, we can continue on without the slides, but we can talk about some of the other things that we've been talking about that we're using Measure O to be able to do is some of the community policing projects, and that's been by these enhanced 9 patrol officers in our community. And we've done so many events that I'm proud that council's been able to help participate in those. And we've had 2 tacos with a cop event. We've had ice cream with a cop. We just had cookies with a cop this weekend. So if you're eating it, you can come join the Santa Rosa Police Department. We like to eat, I think, is what we're getting out of this. So we're really trying to get out there and be involved in some of these community events. And it's really been exciting to be able to get invited to different events that we're getting to be able to participate, whether it be at different organizations across our city, different community, really working with our partnerships at the Violence Prevention Partnership and getting our officers out there. And really it's important for me, not only for our community to have a chance to interact with our officers, but what I'm really seeing, it's rewarding for our officers to be able to have that, like the non-police type of contacts with our community, be able to engage in some of of these conversations, whether it be sitting around having a taco on Apple Valley like we did, and able to have like conversations that maybe we won't normally be able to happen. So that's really an important one for us, and we want to continue that. And we're really going to focus too, as the summer comes back in around with the new year, about preparing for some of our major events, like with Country Summer, which is our biggest event that we have at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds, and then obviously the fair and the Wednesday night market, Rose Parade, all these different events that we'll be preparing for. So then Measure O is able to play a key role in that. Next slide, please. Then we'll do a quick glance. We talked about this, and we've talked before about for this last fiscal year, that our priority one response time to the emergency 911 calls was at an alarming time of 7 minutes and 7 seconds. I am proud to say that we've seen some progress in that, and as of this month, I just got the stats this week, they're up to 6 minutes and 52 seconds. So the needle's moving in the right direction, even though I still think our goal has always been to have them under 6 minutes, so we still have work to do, but at least it's not progressing up and it's progressing downward, and we hope to see continued progress on that as we see our calls for service continue to rise each year. Next slide, please. A quick highlight, we won't go through all these to be brief, but we certainly have seen some of the biggest trends that we're seeing with some of this in the streets of Santa Rosa is access to firearms. And we're seeing that tick up year after year. And one of the alarming trends is juvenile access to firearms. In the fiscal year, or in the calendar year 2022, we had 4 juveniles arrested for possession of firearms. Just so far this year, we've had 20 juveniles arrested with firearms. So that's an alarming trend. It was a 400% increase. So Measure O, we're going to continue to focus on these resources out in the street and partnering with our key partners here in the city to see if we can drive those numbers down. Last slide. Any questions or comments related for the police department's presentation?
Looking to council to see if there are any. Councilmember Alvarez?
Chief, could you repeat the numbers of the 13% drop in shootings? There was a number that you stated prior to that.
The one before was so far, if we're on track, we'll do a 20% reduction in homicides, and a 13% in shootings reported to the police department.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
It's great to see the department going towards the transparency and really striving to ease some of the community concerns, and that the officers are okay with it. I think that says a lot about our department and the people that you hire. I did have a question about the videos. They're continuously going, or they only go when the car's on, or they can be turned on and off?
So when the car is in service, so if it's in the back lot of the police department, that they log all off. But once the officer logs in and starts their shift, they have a buffer. The same with our body-worn cameras are like always buffering for 30 seconds. So when they turn on, it goes back 30 seconds because sometimes you miss like what led to the officer turning on their cameras. So they're always going on that, and then they're automated actively. Anytime the lights go on in the vehicle, then they automatically turn on the camera, and the officer can manually turn them on anytime. So if they're doing any enforcement contact, by policy, their camera, both their body-worn camera, and if it's an enforcement contact involving a vehicle, then the vehicle cameras both have to go on, and we have monitoring, internal monitoring steps to make sure that that's occurring.
Thank you. Video cameras are great because they not only protect the public, but they also protect our officers. So I think that is great that we have those. No additional. Councilmember Rogers?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Chief. I know you're very proud, and I'm very proud. I know the city manager is, on all of the work being done around sideshows. Our council has been very supportive of trying innovative approaches. And we talked a couple of weeks ago, and I told you weren't allowed to jinx it too soon when you talked about the 2023 numbers. But really, at this point towards the end of the year, one that you shut down within 10 minutes tells us that we've changed the reputation of Santa Rosa for folks who want to do sideshows, and that we have really, the things that we've tried have worked. So I want to say thank you to you and to the department, because I know a lot of those were officer-led suggestions on how we might be able to respond better.
Yes, thank you. And it's been such a citywide effort of getting people with our city ordinance and with the Violence Prevention Partnership helping us with some of the community education. So we're really proud of kind of the citywide effort on this area.
With no additional question. Oh, Councilmember Fleming.
Yes, I wanted to commend you on the improvement in the homicides in particular and the fatal car accidents. I think that's, every life that's lost, 9 is too many. but it is not 12, and hopefully we'll continue to see these downward trends, and it's a result of all of the different things that we do together. I'm also really heartened to hear that the officers are enjoying getting out there in the community. I will share this anecdote just to help you continue to be competitive. In that last week, my daughter's Boy Scout troop, because Boy Scouts they still call it Boy Scout, whatever. Her Scout troop hosted the sheriff's department at Hidden Valley, and they made no mention of the work that you guys do, and they talked all about their beats in the city, and I just thought that you might want to know that.
All right.
Yeah. And then they turned on all their lights and all this stuff, and all the boys went out and climbed in all the cars, and the girls lined up to ask more questions, and my daughter wanted to know what you had to eat in the county jail. So priorities, since you guys are really concerned about food. Right. So at any rate, I know that you guys do a lot with Boy Scouts, and it's a great way to get involved with kids, but I just want to make sure we don't leave anything on the table, including any food.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I do want to thank you for your report and everything that you've been doing, not only in the work in the police department, but everything you're collaborating with the violence prevention program. And I know that that's been a huge effort as well, what we're doing to impact our youth. And that's going to be the next presentation that I know we're going to hear. But I do want to call out a couple things in the report, and that's the significant amount of staff that our community has helped to fund through Measure O and now through Measure H. And I think that's to be really recognized. In that long report, you can see how many there are after this report tonight, but I want to say thank you. And then could you repeat about the cookies and the cops event? I didn't hear when that was. So is that this weekend, or did I miss it?
We just had it this last Saturday, so sorry.
Oh, well,
I'll plan another one for you to get some
thanks for the email
cookies.
on that one.
Sorry.
So maybe the next one we can let council know, because I do enjoy going to those events to reach our community members and let them know what we're doing to support them. So thank you again.
Yes, absolutely.
I second that. I didn't get an email about the cookies either. I just want to say that.
I'm sorry.
All right, Chief, you're in the
That'll
hot
change.
seat.
I'll get some crumble cookies for you guys.
All right, well, thank you for being here. Thank you very much for the report, and it doesn't look as if we have any more questions from council. Madam City Manager?
All right.
Who's next?
Turn it over to next. Is it fire next?
All right. Good evening, Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor Stapp, and members of the council. Jeff Tibbetts, Deputy Director for Recreation and Parks. Brought the team with me tonight, so good news means you don't have to listen to me very much tonight. And we're also going to play a little game of musical chairs because we're Recreation and Parks, so might as well make a game out of it. With me this evening, I have our ASO, Jason Parrish, who will cover the financial slides. And then on the programming side, for the update of what the amazing staff and community groups have been doing out there, I have Danielle Garduno, our Violence Prevention Partnership Program Manager, and Joanna Moore, the Recreation Supervisor over the Neighborhood Services section.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Jason Parrish, the ASO for Recreation and Parks. And this is a very positive slide for us with the beginning fund balance of $450,000, when 2 short years ago we are looking at a similar size reduction in programs. And so times have changed for us. As you'll see, we had $2.4 million in revenues that were collected, with the $2.1 million in expenditures, which included the extension of the Cycle 10 grants approved by your council. And so our ending fund balance of 682 is very extraordinary in that we are coming out with a new measure, and we also have a fund balance that allows us to pursue different policy options. So as you can see, the majority of the program are in 2 expenditures. One is personnel, and that's divided roughly 1/3 of violence prevention staff to do the planning and the community outreach. 1/3 of that is the recreation staff who actually plans and oversees and manages all the direct neighborhood services. And the final third are actually the seasonal temporary employees, which are in 1/3 or more in some years, are the actual children who participate in the program that then come on to work for us. So, and as you could see, the choice grants are fully funded, roughly at around 35% of what our total revenue input is. And as you can see, there's a little blip at the very end within the violence prevention and the recreation portion of this program. Our interest is converting the revenue directly over to community service. So we don't try and build up a reserve for capital purchases. And in this case, we have just had an extraordinary turnover in staff coming out of the last couple of years in COVID, which are now all getting filled, thankfully. And as we move forward, we're in a very positive financial situation. And I will turn it over now to Joanna Moore, who will present the recreation portion of the presentation.
Good evening, Joanna Moore, Recreation Supervisor with Neighborhood Services. And today I'm going to talk about all the amazing things that we're doing in Neighborhood Services. Neighborhood Services provides programming for youth, at-risk youth, low-income youth, and homeless youth and families throughout Santa Rosa. We provide a safe space for our youth to enjoy recreational activities, social events and activities, and athletic leagues. And we do it in a place where they feel safe without the fear of drugs, gangs, or any other negative influences. We provide access to our community by making our programs and our athletic leagues affordable. Most of our programs are $10 or free. We have a few programs that are $20. We also make sure that we provide programming in areas in high-need neighborhoods, so we're very strategic in the locations that we choose to provide all of our neighborhood services programming. And we also make sure that we have quality programming that we're offering our community. And of course, since we are recreation, it is a whole lot of fun. One thing that is super important for our the recreation team is that we like to create meaningful relationships that provide support and encouragement to our youth and our families that participate in our programs. We really feel like it's important to create or to build trust within our participants and their families, and in doing so, we're able to identify when families are in need of extra support or services within the community. And since we work so closely with the violence prevention team, we are able to refer them over to their wraparound coordinator, and we are assured that they are getting educated on all the different resources and services available to them, and getting them into the programs or different services available. This past year, we've had an extremely successful year in neighborhood services. We served over 1,600 youth and provided just under 200,000 service hours. Some of the sports leagues that we provided this past year was our Junior Giants baseball. We also did Junior Warriors basketball, cheerleading, futsal, flag football, and dance. All of our sports programs are co-ed. In addition to our sports programs, we also offer camps to the community. So whenever the schools are closed, that's when we step in and provided much needed childcare for our community. We have camps, fall break camp, winter break, spring break, and summer break camps. Next slide. In addition to our seasonal programming, we also offer some year-round programming. So we have our after-school programs. Our after-school programs take place at 8 different Burbank housing communities throughout Santa Rosa. We provide homework assistance, we provide recreational activities, and enrichment programs such as STEM, the arts, and also some prevention programs. We also have our family fun events. These are events that we provide to the community. We have a Halloween bash that we just did in October with the violence prevention team. We also do our Spring Fest, where our families and our youth get to meet the Easter Bunny and take pictures. We wrap up the summer with a huge pool party. It's called the Splash Bash at the Ridgeway Aquatic Center. And then we also offer several family barbecues and dances throughout the year. Neighborhood Services has been operating at-risk youth programming since the mid-1990s, and since the Measure O passed in 2004, we have been able to increase the amount of offerings for the community quite a bit. The Neighborhood Services team works diligently to build trust within our community, and especially challenging neighborhoods. And by doing so, we have been able to, our retention rate with our participants and our youth is really high. This past year, we increased our membership by 38%. And lastly, with the longevity of our program, one thing that we really like to see is when our participants in our programs, they become neighborhood services staff. And this is invaluable to us because their knowledge of the families that we serve and the communities that we serve is just so important for our team. And then also it's great as staff because one of our many goals is to make sure that we keep our youth on track and help them resist those negative influences out there. And when they come back to us and they're working with us, we know we've done our part. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Danielle.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Danielle Garduno, Program Manager for the Violence Prevention Partnership. As you all are, I'm sure, aware, Violence Prevention Partnership has been extremely busy over the last fiscal year and in our current year as well. We covered a lot and partnered with a lot of our community partners in the last fiscal year, so I will try to keep this as brief as possible. So first and foremost, we activated our crisis response team in the last fiscal year 3 times. First with the March 1st incident at Montgomery High School, pulling together our community partners to provide resources and support to the high school, including free therapy sessions for students directly impacted by the incident, as well as art therapy sessions in class and also during the lunch hour, and facilitated discussions with students who witnessed the violence about cultivating and maintaining safety on their school campus. In addition to that, one of our choice granted agencies also provided support to the Roseland School District because while the incident happened within a different school district, a lot of the fear radiated out to other schools in our community, and so worked on a parent education event where our staff helped participate in that as well. We also activated the crisis response team after the 2 June shootings this year, which were within 8 days of each other. So again, activating our community partners to provide services and support to the victims' families as well as those who were witnesses. This included working with Buckaloo Programs, 4Cs, LifeWorks, our police department, and the district attorney's office to assist one of the witnesses of the first shooting with obtaining services for both himself and his family members, including mental health therapy and relocation assistance. In response to these 2 shootings, we also hosted 2 community wellness pop-ups in both impacted neighborhoods. So the first one being at Bellevue Ranch Neighborhood Park, and the second one being at the Continental Apartments on Corby Avenue. These were an opportunity to bring services and resources out to those impacted neighborhoods and have conversations and engage with the community members there about what we are doing to help reduce youth violence in our community, as well as link them to services that are needed. We had about 15 community partners participate in the first event and 10 participate in the second event, and reaching a total of about 150 residents between both neighborhoods. In addition to that, we also continued to implement our life skills curriculum during the fiscal year. The first round that we did was at Roseland Accelerated Middle School, where we worked with 6 youth throughout the 12-week course. And then we partnered with our neighborhood services team in our teen summer sports camp program, reaching 24 youth during that particular camp over a 5-week period of time. So the youth got to participate in the camp itself, and then they also got to participate after the camp in life skills course, where they received curriculum around anger management, conflict resolution, as well as exposure to other city departments, including our police department, fire department, and then other parts of our recreation team. Finally, our team also hosted this year's Roseland Cinco de Mayo event, which was a huge success, given that we only had about 2 weeks to plan it. We brought together about 26 community partners and reached about 1,500 community members throughout the course of the 5-hour event. And while it rained, and also while we don't typically plan this community event, doing so this year helped provide our community with a safe, family-friendly space to celebrate, and also prevented sideshow activity and incidents of violence that we've seen over the last couple of years. So it was a great success. Moving on, we also implemented our Guiding People Successfully program, which is our referral program here at the city, linking youth and their families to needed services and support. This is funded, the position, the wraparound coordinator position, is funded through our Sonoma County probation department, but we also utilize our Measure O funding through our choice grant partners to link those referred to us to services directly. This year we saw a spike in the number of referrals coming our way. We had 119 non-probationary youth referrals coming in, mainly from our schools, as well as 20 referrals coming in from the probation team. This is a 43% increase over the last fiscal year, which we had about 60 total referrals. So 48 non-probationary youth and 12 probationary youth in 2021, 2022. And then so I just also want to point out, in 2020 through 2021, those numbers were even lower at a total of 46 total referrals. So we have seen those numbers go up. We're seeing them currently going up this year as well. And we're seeing a lot of those come in from our schools. And I think it has to do with the violence that's currently happening in our community and happening in our schools. And then finally, Measure O funding was also used for our Choice Grant program. We implemented year 1 of our Choice Cycle 11 program, where we funded 8 agencies in the first year at $750,000, and are still currently implementing that in year 2 as well. We utilized what's called the results-based accountability framework to evaluate our success. And with that framework, we look at how much did we do, how well are we doing it, and is anyone better off? And I'm not going to go through all of the numbers because there's quite a bit there in the report, but I will say that we engaged 5,858 participants across the board in our funded agencies. And this included providing youth and parents with one-on-one intensive case management services, enrolling youth in programs such as camps and treks and art projects, youth and family members being engaged in therapeutic services, students trained to be peer leaders, school staff participating in school-based programming, and adults and youth participating in community-based programs, events, and activities. We also held 5 Violence Prevention Awareness Series events throughout the year, reaching a total of 878 participants. And in addition to the larger grant program, we also implemented our Choice Midi Grant program, where we were able to provide funding for 9 agencies to provide operational costs for some of their violence violence prevention work at $45,000 total. In the upcoming year, we are working on shifting the focus, given the state of violence right now in our community, to shift those mini grant funds to address crisis response needs, including relocation costs and linkages to support for victims of violence. And that is it.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Just hearing everything that you guys have been doing makes me really tired. So I know that you guys are doing a lot, and it is great for our community. Are there any other, Vice Mayor? Oh, sorry, not Vice Mayor. I've been saying it for a year. Sorry, I got to get used to it. Councilmember McDonald.
Thanks. I'll keep the title. I liked it. Okay, sorry, Mark. I just have a couple of comments and really want to thank you for all the work that you do on this particular part of the work of the city of Santa Rosa. So under the evaluation results on page 26 of the report, I just wanted to call out a couple of things because I think they're so impressive. So if we ever are questioning the money that we're investing in the youth in the community, I think this part of the report really says why it's such an important investment when we're looking on specifically return of investment. When we talk about kids, the impact is so much greater. So if you look at 140 youth and families engaged in counseling, 89% showed a reduction in risk-taking behavior like gang involvement and substance abuse. The other one was 223, which are duplicated, so they could be these same children. They participated in a diversion and intervention services. 86% did not violate probation while enrolled, and 96% did not incur new criminal charges when enrolled in these programs. So I think that these numbers, and that's why I call out this part of the actual report, are so incredible. It's amazing that we're able to fund the staff positions in fire and police, which are critical in the city, but I think the impact that we're able to make with the Measure O and now going into Measure H funds is so important. And so I just want to say thank you. I know we're pushing forward and doing a lot in year one implementation and looking at how our choices in the choice grants are going to impact that strategic plan. So I just want to say thank you again to staff for all the work that we do in Parks and Rec, that what we do impacts the kids in the community, and thank you to the voters for saying that this matters to us and that we want to continue to do so.
Vice Mayor?
I basically want to reiterate the Vice Mayor Emeritus's point about the Violence Prevention Partnership. I know I speak for both of us. We very much enjoy being part of the policy team for the VPP, and this year it's been easy to see the value, as the Vice Mayor Emeritus pointed out. When we're out talking about the issues that are going on with our schools, and you underlined these, this is a big part of the response that the city has to give to what is the city doing to make schools safe and make our streets safe, especially when it comes to youth and at-risk youth. So the spotlight is really on your team, and you've done an amazing job, and it's been a pleasure to watch you work. And Chief Cregan mentioned it as well. Just the way that you two are the way that these two groups are working together, the police and the violence prevention team. Good things are happening. Thank you very much to both of you.
Seeing no other questions, I do have a question. It is for the neighborhood services. My question is, I know that we're focused on Measure O right now, which is great, but I ask the same question every year. Jeff, you probably can say it verbatim, what question I'm gonna ask, and that is, have we, or what are we doing to integrate the youth programming, not based on the ability to pay?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we have done. With our events, it's a little bit easier. So a couple of our events have been integrated, the Fairy Tale Ball, the Halloween Bash. We're also in the process right now of revamping our scholarship, our general scholarship program, and that's going to open a couple doors for us to continue to make progress where all this is integrated as part of Recreation and Parks. A big piece where that's going to happen is in our work experience program, which I think in the work that we're doing is a vital element of participation in programs, to volunteer in programs, to staff in programs, and it's that continuum of service with the youth to keep them on the right track and make sure that they're successful. So that'll be an element of programming that we're expanding on. In terms of a lot of the neighborhood services-based programs, we're still struggling a little bit. We're still working on it. I will turn Joanna, off the top of my head, I can't think of the last program that wasn't full that neighborhood services has offered. Joanna, I don't know if you have one off the top of your head, but that includes summer camps, that includes the break camps, that includes the sports leagues. I guess flag football is an area where we're still looking to, that's a new program we brought back that we're looking to expand, and one of the first areas that we're looking to integrate, and we just need to build the capacity. So we're dealing with, on two fronts, is the capacity on the staffing side to grow the programs, and then the capacity on the facilities and the amenities that we have. Some of those programs that we have that are very popular are limited by gym space, and some of those, the size of the dance room, the amount of instructors that we have to teach these things. So we're making progress on some of the things behind the scenes and some of the structure that allows us to grow, but we are at capacity issues. And so right now, some of that integration is, in order to integrate most of these programs, would mean moving some of the kids that we're serving onto a wait list. And so it's that battle that we're working on right now.
Like you just gave me the guilt trip. But I'm happy to know that you guys are working on that, because I really feel that in order for us to have the diversity and inclusion, we need to have integrated programming, and it should not be based on the ability to pay. So I said it last year, I said it this year, and I'll probably continue to say it next year, because I'm very passionate about this and I feel like it is very important. One
more thing if I just add, and they don't have to say yes, but I guarantee you they would say that it has been a topic of conversation that we're having regularly. And one of the things that has also been taking place, the salary, right, the dip in the expenditures because of the staff turnover. Our management team is soon going to be 80% replaced in the next month. And so that's a piece of it too, is as this new management team comes forward, it's certainly something that they're looking at. Across the board of all recreation, again, not singling out neighborhood services programs, but across the board. So we've talked about some of our very young that are traditional recreation programs. Well, how do we integrate and get some of those neighborhood services kids into those programs that have never been Measure O funded programs? And so on both, right, strategies looking both sides. How do we get these kids so that they're all playing together in those traditional recreation swim lessons, whatever those things might be? And then how do we do the same on the neighborhood services side as well?
Yes, and I would like to clarify, I was not singling out neighborhood services. I think that as a whole, we need to figure out how to integrate. So thank you very much for the presentation. I think we have fire coming down.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers, members of council. Scott Westrope, Fire Chief of the City of Santa Rosa. With me tonight is Sarah Roberts, our finance analyst, and Sarah is going to take the first couple slides.
Thank you, Chief Westrope. The next slide will show you the beginning fund balance for the fiscal year 22-23. We started the year with $3.8 million, and our revenues were approximately $4.8 million. Our expenditures were about 4.4 with encumbrances of 1.1. Those two encumbrances are about approximately $870,000 for our Type 1 engine and $244,000 for mobile radios. That project is still being implemented, and staff's working diligently to get them all installed. The next slide shows our salaries and benefits, services and supplies, administration, and transfer out of debt. The debt service is on our former Fire Station 5 site lease. It'll come to It'll end in summer of 2025, and approximately 3.5 million of our budget goes towards salaries and benefits and services and supplies. And our revenues and expenditures since the inception of the fund have stayed pretty close. We run a pretty tight ship, and our revenues will continue to be monitored.
Thank you, Sarah. So as council knows, there's 3 funding items that Measure O can pay for the fire department. That's personnel, fire stations and locations, and special equipment. So in looking at what Measure O funded as far as personnel goes, we have 3 fire captains who are the frontline supervisors, and there are also paramedics staffed by Measure O. We have 1 fire captain who is assigned to our training division who runs the training facility on West College Avenue. 3 fire engineers who are the apparatus operators who are also paramedics, and 3 firefighter paramedics. Measure O also pays for 25% of the EMS division chief, which we'll talk about here a little bit more in a moment. And it pays for the paramedic incentive pay for 6 firefighters so that our ladder trucks are now advanced life support or paramedic equipped. So the impacts of Measure O to the community are, it's provided 9 firefighters and a training captain. It's provided 3 engines and 2 trucks to be advanced life support or paramedic equipped and staffed. It's enhanced the emergency medical services management through partial funding of the division chief. And as you know, EMS is about 65% of what we do on the 30,000 calls a year we run for service. So it's very important to have that oversight. And with all of that, if you look at what it takes to staff a fire engine, it takes 3 people on 3 shifts, so it takes 9 people. So Measure O essentially pays for an entire fire engine. And if you look at our deployment, we have 10 fire engines on duty on a day-to-day basis, so it equates to 10% of our firefighting force as far as fire engine goes. So the renewal of Measure O into Measure H was vital for us, or we would have lost about 10% of our firefighting force. With that comes a reduced fire loss, improved EMS patient outcomes, increased community outreach, and then obviously we financed some of the fire station construction projects with it. So looking back a little bit, Fire Station 10, which is in the southwest where our office is at, was constructed in 2008 with Measure O funds. Station 11, which is in the junior college neighborhood, was opened in 2009. And then the previous Station 5 on Newgate Court was opened in 2016, and we lost that station during the tubs, and we're currently in the process of rebuilding Fire Station 5 permanently in a different location. As far as the special equipment goes, Measure O has purchased 2 Type 1 fire engines. 1 is currently on order. As Sarah mentioned, the funds are encumbered as part of a purchase of 5 fire engines out of last fiscal year. It's purchased 1 Type 3 wildland fire engine, 4 command vehicles, 1 swift water rescue trailer, and 55 mobile radios and 8 mobile repeaters. And with that, we'll turn it over to you for any questions or comments you may have.
Looking at council for questions or comments. Councilmember Rogers.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Not to stray a little bit from the topic, but we just implemented not too long ago the Vehicle Replacement Fund. How is that integrated with this conversation around what we can do with Measure O, and how's that working out so far?
So Measure O vehicles are not part of the equipment replacement program, the capital fleet replacement program. So for instance, the 1 engine that we have purchased previously with Measure O, it was paid for again out of Measure O, and same with the Type 3. When it comes due, we'll pay for it out of Measure O. So those engines are sort of set aside and kept out of the general fleet conversation, just like the personnel are.
Okay. And is there any ability within the Measure O scope to create something specific for the Measure O engines?
I think so. It's something I'd need to talk to the CFO about and make sure that the COC is good with, but it's something we could certainly explore.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Sarah, it's good to know that you run a tight ship over there, Chief. Thank you so much for the presentation, both of you.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to turn it back over to Veronica to close this section out.
Well, thank you very much to the departments. As you can tell, it's a wide array of staff and resources and talents that go into turning this quarter-cent sales tax into all the programs and services. And thank you for your questions and listening to our presentation. So we have two actions for council today. One is by motion to accept the annual report for fiscal year 22-23, as well as change the name of the committee, the Citizens Oversight Committee, to be the Public Safety and Prevention Citizens Oversight Committee, formerly Measure O, but for short we will call this the PSAP, COC. And then also by resolution to approve the change of the implementation plan to return to a one-year model. So thank you.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to Councilmember Okrepke, I would like to thank Councilmember Rogers for all your hard work. You see where the funds are going, and you really are providing a service to the community by keeping them coming in to our community. So thank you so much for that. I want to thank Yvette Minor and also the other members of the Oversight Committee that worked really hard to make this happen so we can continue to get these funds in our community. And with that, Councilmember Kripke.
Thank you very much. I will move a resolution. We'll do these in two. So first, I'll move a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa amending the implementation plan for the Measure O for transaction and use tax.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Okrepke and a second by by Vice Mayor Stapp.
Actually, real quick, if we're renaming this, do we need to alter that resolution? Because it says Measure O.
You're taking an action. If you're passing the motion first,
and then renaming it,
and then the motion is you will be renaming it. So then the second action would be the resolution, and if you so choose, we can make sure to make that correction on the resolution to use the new name, which you will have just renamed.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do the vote.
Withdraw that.
It depends how you want to do it. If you want to do the resolution first, then I think the name hasn't changed. If you want to do the motion first, then the resolution can have the new name if you so specify. We'll go ahead and make that change.
If you make the name change first, you have to change the name.
Right, I'm good. Okay, then we'll just keep going the way we are.
Okay. So can we call the vote?
I believe you need to take public comment first before you take a vote.
We didn't take public comment.
We have public comment.
We are now taking public comment on item 14.3. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of the period. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. Thank you for this report. I would ask that you also implement a new approach and you have a three-way equal split. I believe that now that you've got money left over at both the fire department and the police department, that shows that they can get by with what they're getting, and you could use this money to help over with the youth. You could get this going to where if you're splitting it three ways equally, 33% for each, this could improve the approaches that have been happening for the youth. And as was presented here today, everything seems to be looking up and that the youth are being served, but there's more youth that need to be served. I do believe that if you folks would take the initiative tonight and look at this like we can take the chance now and get more funding over to the Violence Prevention Partnership, over to the youth efforts, and the other things that make a community not just livable, but enjoyable. That's something that's really important, especially for low-income kids in disadvantaged, underserved neighborhoods. The disadvantaged, underserved neighborhood of the Roseland Census District actually is listed as the most impacted by the Portrait of Sonoma County 2021 update, in which they showed that that census district is the most disadvantaged according to the Human Development Index that they use. These aren't my numbers. These are numbers that come from the Sonoma County efforts that they put forward with the original Portrait of Sonoma County. Finally, a Boys and Girls Club was put out on Sebastopol Road with private funding, and that's made a difference. But there's such a need. I was actually told by youth out there that because there's an agreement with the Roseland School District, some youth nearby can't use that Boys and Girls Club. You have to be a member of the Roseland School District. So there's these types of things that actually could be changed if you offered up a little bit more money coming with an equal split. I think that this type of an approach may seem to the fire department or the police department, well, you're cutting into our pie. You're taking something from us. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you look at it like we're splitting it evenly, you'll find that they'll have less calls for service, perhaps, from the police because our youth are being served better working with the Violence Prevention Partnership and, as we used to call it, the Gang Prevention Task Force that got this all started. And basically, you saw we've had more violence. So let's look towards doing it this way. Thank you for your time.
Seeing no additional comment on this item.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the presentation as well as the work that's been done on this. I want to thank our Measure O Oversight Committee that has been deliberating. One of the things that I think is really important and I'm supportive of in the name change, but want to make sure I call it out, is that by having it the Public Safety and Prevention Tax Oversight Committee, it really does prevent false advertising for folks who get on the measure. The Citizens Oversight Committee, their role is to make sure that we are adequately spending the funds, the way that voters have said that we need to spend the funds that come in from Measure H, from that tax. So I want to make sure that we're very clear and very deliberate for folks when they take that role, that they're not telling the chief, whether it's the fire chief or the police chief, how to spend those dollars. They're making sure that the police chief or the fire chief is spending those dollars consistent with the way that the voters ask them to be spent. And I like that. I know there's a pretty robust conversation amongst the Measure O members. And so I want to call that out as a very specific and deliberate thing that they did when they renamed it Public Safety and Prevention Tax Citizens Oversight Committee.
Can you explain to us about the percentages?
So in the measure that was approved by voters, it broke down what percentage of the Measure O funding needed to go to each category area. That was a discussion that happened more than 20 years ago. We briefly discussed it as well to see if there was an alteration that needed to be made before we put that measure back on. But the tax measure itself that voters approved dictates what percentage goes to what department. So I know I did hear the suggestion about reallocating the funding, so it's 30, 30, 30. That actually would not be permissive under what voters approved. That'd be a misappropriation of the funds based on the city's agreement with voters. If folks wanted to change the allocation amount, they could go back to the ballot. That's one way that they could do it. But our role as a council and as the city is to implement the tax measure the way that the public asked us to when they passed it. And the COC that we're approving, their job is to make sure that we do just that.
Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. So at this time, we have a motion made by Councilmember Okrepke and a second by Councilmember Stapp. And I believe we can now call the vote for the first.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
All right, for the second part, I'll make a motion to accept the Measure O annual report for fiscal year 2022-2023 and change the name of the Measure O Citizen Oversight Committee to the Public Safety and Prevention Tax Citizens Oversight Committee.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Okrepke and a second made by Vice Member Stapp. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Rogers?
Aye.
Councilmember Okrepke?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Stapp?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everyone that came and gave presentations, all the departments. So we're moving on to item no written communications, item 17, which is our second public comment on non-agenda matters. Madam City Clerk.
We are now taking public comment on item 17, non-agenda matters. This is the time when any person who has not previously addressed the council under public comment. Item 13 may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are subject matter of the council. If you are in the council chamber and would like to comment, please make your way to the podium. You will have 3 minutes and a countdown timer will alert at the end of that period. Seeing no one approach the podium for public comment.
Thank you. We have no announcements, but before closing the meeting, I would like to wish Miss Charlene Greiner a happy birthday. She is a community volunteer. She contributes to the Redwood Empire Food Bank. She volunteers at the women's shelter, and she has been a part of her church for decades, inspiring and empowering women. And so, Miss Charlene, happy birthday. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much.